name's Robin Ruscio, and I'm a freelance bassist in Denver, Colorado, and I also am a private instructor. I also play upright and as well as electric bass guitar. Today I want to talk a little bit about a very important subject I share with almost all of my students, whether they're just getting started or whether they're coming in for some ideas after years and years of playing. And that is my approach to the left hand. Since I have the perspective of being an upright player and also have even played guitar for the last decade, I've really come to appreciate the advantages to using techniques from both on the bass guitar. This instrument is a hybrid of the guitar and the upright bass, so I think it makes a lot of sense to use some of the technical concepts that were developed on each of those instruments that go back long before the invention of the electric bass in the 1950s by Leo Fender in order to get the most out of the instrument. There's basically one huge difference in the approach of the left hand when we're talking about upright bass versus electric guitar or acoustic guitar. And that is that on the very long string length of the upright bass, it's impossible to play in the lower positions with all four fingers. That is to say that if you try to spread the human hand, average human hand apart, in order to play 4 in-tune half steps on the upright bass, you discover that most people would not be capable of doing that unless they were on an unusually small bass or had unusually large hands. And even then, in the middle positions and all the way up until they're in the upper registers of the double bass, the standard has been to play with just 3 fingers in one position. It looks something like this, using the first, second, and fourth fingers all a half step apart. The advantage of this is that it's easier to spread the fingers and maintain a consistent, effortless hand position with a lot of independence that wouldn't be possible with all 4 fingers when they're spread to their maximum. The third finger is not used as an active finger, although you'll usually see it coming to rest on the string. It's not necessarily doing any significant pressing on the string at this point. My pinky is quite capable of holding the note by itself. It's more just to keep the finger in place with the rest of the hand so that the hand is ready to go. That goes into a whole other subject of technique we're not going to get into here today. But the idea of using these 3 fingers, again, well established on the on the upright bass for hundreds of years. Now, contrast that with the guitar-like approach that a lot of electric bassists tend to get more familiar with from the get-go. Perhaps one of the first things you learn to play or working on is the major scale, and you probably learned right away to use all 4 fingers in a given position. Got a lot of advantages in that I suddenly have more notes accessible to me without having to actually make a shift. The disadvantage is, again, when you get to the lower positions of even the electric bass guitar, you may not be able to spread the fingers apart very easily and do this with a lot of effortlessness, which I think should always be one of our goals when we're talking about technique. Probably more significant is that we don't often need all 4 fingers. There's not a lot of musical situations that necessarily call for you to play every fret in a position in the lower register of the instrument. So a lot of times using this upright bass-like 3-fingered approach is more than adequate in order to get the technique we need to deliver our musical ideas, and it actually saves us a bit of strain on the hand. I think a great exercise, if you'd like to try this right now, is to try playing some notes using a more guitar-like approach on the lower positions of the bass guitar. So for example, I'll play an F natural here on my E string. I've got a 5-string bass, so if you've got a 4, you just start on your lowest string. F natural to G natural, 1st to 3rd finger. Now that's not an unreasonably difficult fingering. I could do that all day and not, I don't know, it feels fine enough. But what gets interesting is if I start to move this finger up to, say, a 5th, very common interval for bass players, as we all know from the jokes. Even more interesting is when I try and play an octave. Now at this point, again, hopefully you can do this. You've got enough finger strength from practicing if you've been playing for a while. If not, it's something to shoot for. But this isn't necessarily the most optimal, easy way to do this. Try playing the same fingering with a more upright-like approach. Try playing F to G, F to C, and then the octave, F to F, with the fourth finger, and I think you'll find that it naturally fits your hand better. This is an extreme version of this, but there's similar kinds of things going on even in the middle positions of the bass. I see a lot of bass players commonly trying to play ideas like this, and I don't know that it's the best use of the hand. I think they're going to be more prone to injury. This is a lot more effortless and allows, again, for greater independence between the second and fourth finger, because these two fingers, the first and second, have a lot of independence between them. You're wired that way. It's just part of human evolutionary biology. But the third and fourth fingers are more closely connected. It's a lot more difficult to do independent motions with these two fingers. So if I use my second finger and fourth finger, it doesn't matter if this third finger is coming along for the ride, because I don't have to differentiate it much between my fourth finger. So now, that being said, you still need to work on the guitar-like approach. 4 fingers in a given position. You want to be absolutely solid with that. And of course, as you get higher on the position, depending on the scale length of your bass and your hand size, you may find that a 3-fingered approach using the first, second, and fourth fingers no longer works as well, because the fingers have to get kind of squished together, as you can see up here. At that point, I usually switch to using my third finger even for whole steps or fifths. So, to recap, when I'm in the lower positions and I'm using simpler intervals like whole steps, I can do a lot of my playing just using the first, second, and fourth fingers. As I get into the middle positions, I often can go either way. And as I get in the upper positions, I use the 4-finger system exclusively. So, something to ponder, something to consider when you're practicing. I often recommend my students start their 4-finger approach around maybe the second finger on the 7th fret, and E natural is a great natural place to start. And you can work on playing that, say, between the 5th and 10th frets to get comfortable there. If you're going to lower positions, you may want to just start with 1, 2, and 4 if you're a beginner. As you become more advanced, of course, it makes sense to go and practice these kind of hand stretches down there too, for when the lines come where you find that necessary. But you may also want to spend some time just experimenting with this. If you'd like to see some great examples of this kind of approach with the bass guitar, 2 huge names come to mind. The first is John Patitucci, also an upright player who is a phenomenal electric bassist as well. And you'll see that his hand position is sort of similar in approach to mine. He uses that 3-fingered approach in the lower positions and changes as he goes, depending on where he's playing. Another great player you've probably heard of is Jaco Pastorius. And again, if you watch him, a lot of his unbelievable virtuoso licks can be played quite easily with this 3-fingered upright-like approach. And again, he tends to switch between the two depending on his musical needs. So, something to think about. Go off and practice it on your own, and drop me a line. Let me know if you have any thoughts or questions about this. And if you're interested in finding out more about me, I suggest you check out my website, robinruccio.com, and we'll look forward to seeing you around in the bass world. Thanks.